another edition of Strength Through Stress, brought to you by Top Virtual Staffing Solutions. Let's all continue to grow, learn, and innovate. And if you guys could follow us on social media, we would appreciate that. Feel free to reach out to us with the contact information identified here. All right, so we are on the 23rd session of Strength Through Stress. So we will continue with cognitive restructuring as a continuation. And as always, we're going to review what we did last time in terms of journal, willpower, and growth mindset. And then we'll have a new set of such things for today's session. And it's really important for us to continue to develop our critical and scientific thinking skills and metacognition, especially with everything that's going on right now. You just have to follow the science. And it's a scientific thinker that you can be. All right. So again, these are for informational purposes only. And the reason why we're providing these for free, because we want you to donate to worthwhile causes. And for today's session, we have Horizon Foundation here as our nonprofit organization that we want to highlight. And speaking of nonprofit organizations, we highlight one per session. And but if you want to donate to all the nonprofit organizations equally, please go to this GoFundMe page. All right. Also, while free, we also have virtual town hall sessions where we invite subject matter experts. And here we have Barbara talking about relationship marketing for non-marketers. Okay, Miko, before we move on to the review, do you have any questions? No? Okay. All right, so review. We discussed last time in terms of the power of thoughts and language, as we will continue with changing the mindset with a lot of things and working with the reality of what is real and not something that is made up in our minds. And that's what I was talking about earlier regarding scientific thinking, because you just have to be realistic with our situation. So, all right. So care to share what you have that you can personally connect to with any of these? Or give your own example.
I think I can reduce toxic thoughts by I don't do the personalization. I don't overgeneralize.
So if you don't do that, then that helps you reduce toxic thoughts.
Yes.
And I assume that goes with if it's a little bit windy, all of a sudden you're not going to generalize it as a hurricane.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Let's move on to the willpower aspect here. Is there anything that you want to discuss or relate to?
I can challenge my willpower, despite the fact that I am really tired, by not thinking of what's coming and what I have to do, but I think of my expected outcome.
You're focusing on your expected outcome.
Yes.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yes. A good outcome.
Okay. But of course, okay, so that's one of the steps. But of course, at the end of the day, you have to do something about it.
Yes.
Okay, right? I mean, you don't end up thinking, okay, my expected outcome is to do well on keyboard. But if you're not practicing, then
Yes.
It's rather useless, right? Okay. All right, good. But you know what? Having that end in mind, and I know that's one of the things that we have discussed in Life and Learner Success, correct?
Yes.
All right, good. Okay, so for growth mindset, is there anything here that you want to share?
I think that would be interest leads to abilities.
Okay.
I think you missed the S, I'm not sure. So once this was a long time ago, before I started reading Harry Potter, I think I told you this a few days ago, but my mom, she told me to read the Harry Potter books, and so I did. And then I read a few chapters, or just one long chapter. So I read one long chapter, and I got a little bit interested, but I didn't really touch those books until I guess a month or so. I'm not sure. But then when I started, I tried looking for my page where I left off last time. And when I found it, I kept reading and reading and reading. And I just couldn't stop reading. And then that made me start reading other really long books, or books that don't have pictures.
And pop-ups?
What do you mean?
You know, those pop-up books.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
All right, you were a little bit choppy earlier, but because I know the story a little bit, is that you said that at first with these novels, you were not interested, but now here you are, you're breezing through them. And I ask you, are you really reading word per word? And you said yes. So what's the ability that you were able to develop then with this growth mindset?
The ability to read really fast, or efficient and fast.
Okay, sounds good. And yeah, and that's what it is. When we're interested in something, then it helps us with the abilities of working on whatever we need to do. All right, super. So let's move on to critical thinking here. So with what we have discussed with cognitive restructuring, is there any item here, a specific critical thinking standard or element or trait that you want to relate to in relation to our previous discussion?
Okay, so that would probably, again, be perseverance.
Okay.
So from what I learned last session, how should I say this? About the should statements, that's something I still have to keep on working with, because I tend to say should a lot, and especially in my grammar books. And I even corrected you once.
You did?
Yeah, in the garden, I think. And yeah, so I'm still working on that. The should should statements.
And
And
speaking
there's
of,
my perseverance.
and speaking of correction, yeah, I think that should be interest leads to abilities, right? Is that correct? Speaking of grammar?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so, okay, and that's what it is. You identify with something that we need to work on, and we should continue to persevere. I'm just kidding. Did you get it?
No.
Should, because I said
I
we
just
should.
laughed because you did. Oh! Oh my gosh.
All right.
Oh.
Let's move on here with higher order thinking, scientific thinking, and metacognition. So any item here that you want to relate to with our previous conversation, with our previous session.
Okay. Well, I wanted to create. Well, I'm still doing that, really. But I'm wanting to create a type of Pokemon game, but with my made-up characters of Harry Potter, animals, and Pokemon mixed together. Their names and how they look. And I already have 2 of them, but not much good. So, I was thinking of this also ties in with toxic thoughts and what I mentioned earlier about the toxic thoughts. I was constantly thinking of the code, of how much code I needed to do, and if my code would be correct or not. And those were obviously toxic thoughts. So what I did there was that I didn't think about the code. I thought more about the art, so I could get my mind off things in the code. And then once I did the art, it kind of gave me the idea of perseverance, because since I already did that art, I felt that I should already be good with the code because I persevered so much in making it. And to my opinion, I think the art is good.
Okay. It's good that you're tying up. Again, you're a little bit muffled. But the way I understand it is that as you continue to think with what you want to create, with the programming, and if you tie that up with your interest moving to your abilities of reading all of these Harry Potter books over and over, is that now you're coming up with other characters that you want to create with your ability to program, and you're minimizing the shoulds as you continue to develop your program. Did I capture what you just shared?
Yes.
Okay, did I miss anything? Because again, you were a little bit garbled, but I think because I know the backstory of things. Yes, okay, all right, good.
And this also, I think, I'm not sure, but this kind of also has to do with evaluating.
Okay.
And applying my creativity, sorry.
You're evaluating what, the program that you've done, that you're doing? Okay.
And my kind of recycling method.
Okay. Wait. When you say recycling method, what do you mean? You're recycling programs, or?
Yes. No. Well, the energy I use for drawing, it's kind of recycled to make it energy for my code.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you. And that's a very good scope of your own personal experience and tying up with everything that we've been discussing, that through and through, and then at the same time with something specific, such as your the should haves. And we will actually revisit should have again today. But anything else before we move on to our topic for today's session?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, cool. So with the coping strategies of being more aware on how we think, how we process information, how we perceive realities. So one of them is victimization, that you continuously view yourself that you're a victim. So for example, when COVID-19 took place, and let's say you've never been sick, and then all of a sudden you're victimizing yourself for everything that's going on. I mean, by all means, there are a lot of limitations that has happened and all the not so good things that took place. But we have to be careful that, for example, again, COVID-19 is here to get you specifically, unless if you are being irresponsible of not wearing masks, if you're going to crowded situations, and obviously you don't, so there's a prominent figure right now, I don't need to say his name right now, but he's the one leading that charge of identifying it as a hoax, and I'm not so sure how he's following the science, and then now he has it. So everything that the scientists, the epidemiologists, the medical doctors and researchers have identified to avoid, it seems like he doesn't care much about it. And so again, you don't want to wish anybody ill, but it is what it is, as pretty much what he said as well anyway. And right now I know he's being brought to a hospital. So if you are being responsible and careful of yourself, of following COVID-19 realities, so be careful of victimizing yourself. But if you are being irresponsible and not following what the leaders say, what the scientific leaders share, then again, just be careful of how to perceive things as such. All right, let's go and move on here. Flexible optimism, positive thinking. Sure, when we're a little bit up there in age, let's go ahead and identify. I'm still young at heart. I can still do a lot of things. I can still go ahead and function. But again, as long as we are careful with what we're doing, that's the critical part. Okay, as long as we're following the guidelines for COVID-19, we should be fine. Okay, so positive thinking that we can go ahead and succeed through whatever it is that we're going through. And that's roughly the opposite of being a victim, where you're just thinking of the negative things all the time. More about negative things is that you're looking at the worst in every situation, where pessimism will go ahead and come in. I'm a little bit guilty of this because I always, one of my motto is prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So that's what it is. So with COVID-19, I was preparing for the worst, however I can prepare. But I'm hoping that we'll get better. So at least in the state where we are in, it seems like we're having good news of there's no death from COVID-19 in our state, which is the first day, I believe, in the past 6-7 months. So that's good, but it doesn't mean that we will go ahead and become reckless, just like what other people do. We still have to follow the science, we still have to follow the guidelines of how to be safe and secure. And there. All right. More about this is an extreme reality of pessimism is catastrophizing. What's the root word of catastrophizing?
Catastrophe.
All right. So, and that's what it is all the time. Everything is a catastrophe. If it's windy, all of a sudden you start thinking it's a catastrophe. So we have to be careful. And whatever the situation is, and I'm not going to go ahead and say to belittle things that are actually really bad. I'm not saying that. But again, we have to take things as it is without really making things worse more than what they are. So let's go ahead and not catastrophize for every situation. You have to be careful of that. All right, let's go and move on here. Next is perfectionism. I have the same image that I had earlier, is because if we're thinking of always something that would be perfect, and I'm not saying that getting up there in age is imperfect, but there seems to be that yearning to be young. But that's what it is. If we're yearning for something that is above human standards all the time, then we have to be careful of that. And with perfectionism, and I am guilty about this at times as well, I want things to be as perfect as possible. And then now I get stuck because I know it's not going to be perfect. So I need to find ways of just getting things done, of starting to work on it and just complete it. Because if I'm waiting for perfectionism to happen, it's not going to happen. I mean, it can happen, but is it going to happen all the time? No, not either. So we always strive to the best of our abilities, do our due diligence of homework, of reading, of researching, and again, applying scientific thinking and self-directed learning. Go ahead.
I was thinking that you could have said it in a shorter way by saying, instead of imposing above human standards on oneself, maybe you could just do feeling extraordinary.
I understand about the feeling extraordinary, but it's not a feeling. It's a thought process. I like that you tried that. I like that you are trying to paraphrase things. That's completely fine. But I don't want you to lose the essence that this is a mental thought process of me thinking I should be perfect. I'm aiming for perfection. If I'm feeling extraordinary, then you go ahead and feel that you are special, and we all are in our own respective ways. Nobody is exactly the same as anybody, even for identical twins. And I know we have discussed this, even for identical twins that grow up together. They are still extraordinary in their own respective ways. So feeling extraordinary wherein you feel special, that's fine. But are you feeling special that you think you're above somebody else? And that's a whole different story. And I'll tie that up to what we were discussing earlier. If you feel like you are exceptional, exceptionalism, because that's what people will think, that they're not going to wear masks and they will be with crowded areas, and that's what it is. They feel they're exceptional because they're feeling extraordinary. That's different in terms of perfectionism. They're thinking they're perfect versus acting on or working on perfectionism. Do you see the difference there?
Yes.
But I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, that's good. So here we're focusing more on the thought processes and not feeling, because feelings are emotions. Though emotions still come from our brain, but that's different. Okay. All right. So, extreme polarized thinking. That's what it is, too much extreme thought processes. And I'm guilty of this. Like what I said, I'm preparing for the worst. I'm hoping for the best or working for the best. And sometimes I get, and then if you add that to my perfectionism, then I end up not doing anything. So I get stuck with the severity of the spectrum of the exactly worst case scenario. But at the same time, I'm looking for perfection, and I'm so torn because it's too far away. So I need to find that middle ground of just getting things done and just working on things. And so we have to be careful of extreme polarized thinking. So again, it's really finding that balance. That's another coping strategy of cognitive restructuring. Next one is magnifying. Here we go, blow things out of proportion. And that goes both for negative and positive. So going back to what you've identified, if you are extremely thinking that you are exceptional, but if you think you're above somebody else or above other people, that's a whole different story. Okay? If you are feeling that you're exceptional, that you're special in your own respective way, just like everybody else, I guess that's a healthy way of looking at things. So we have to be careful of blowing things out of proportion, whether it's good or bad. So again, the extremes here, we have to be very, very careful of those. For the most part, we magnify the bad things. We magnify COVID-19, okay? But it's not magnified as long as we follow, again, what the science says. And I understand the science is evolving, the research is evolving, because this is a novel virus. We have to learn how it works and how it impacts us and so on and so forth. So whatever we know now is different from 5 months ago, and I'm sure it will be different 5 months from now. So going back to this, no, we don't want to blow things out of proportion regarding COVID-19. However, we need to just be realistic of following what science says. And that's what it is. Okay? And at the same time, you don't magnify that you are extra special, that you are exceptional from contracting COVID-19. Because if you do not follow the standards of what the science says, then guess what? There's no such thing as you being exceptional in that regard. You will contract it, and that's what it is. And unfortunately, even for people who are being very careful, ending up contracting it. All right, next one is thought stopping. I have to do this. I myself have to do this. Is it really important what your negative thoughts are, or is it disabling you? So if it's not enabling you, then we have to stop. If it's not a critical thing, if it's not an important thing, we have to grab it and just throw it in the trash bin and just let it go there. Just stop. So yes, I myself am very much guilty of this when all of a sudden I'm bombarded with my own negative thoughts because of my perfectionism and me preparing for the worst, and then now I'm inundated with the worst. So we have to be very careful of such things. And one of the ways is to, if you start going through that rabbit hole, you have to learn how to stop these negative thoughts and move forward. Okay, next one is brief grief. So today I just went to a funeral. And again, thoughts and prayers to everybody there, especially the departed. And the religious leader identified that time doesn't really heal the loss. It's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. But But if you are able to accept that the departed is now with the maker, but hopefully you're able to reconcile and accept such realities. So and that's where it is in terms of brief grief. I really don't know what the time frame, what the healthy time frame is for grieving, especially for the departed. So again, to each one's own. Everybody's unique, everybody's special. So I can't, nobody can go ahead and say, oh sure, grieve for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. I think the important thing here is you grieve. That's fine. But we need to go back to our reality of being able to be functional, of what we need to do with our responsibilities. I think you can get taking care of yourself, taking care of loved ones, and work or find work, whatever it is that we need to do. So as I was texting the friend of mine, and that's what I mentioned, that, hey, go ahead and eat a little bit of some comfort food, go ahead and sleep, rest, and take care of yourself. The situation of the departed has, it's done. There's nothing we can do about it. So again, I'm not belittling her grieving process. I'm not belittling that. I'm not telling her to stop grieving, but I'm reminding her to take care of herself and her loved ones who are still alive. So, so going back to this brief grief is that grieving is fine. As long as we need to find ways to be able to function and still take care of ourselves and our well-being. All right, so any questions with these coping strategies, Miko?
Nope.
All right, so again, we have to be careful of extremes. And the self-talk that we have discussed, and I know part of the self-talk that we discussed last time, and we will revisit here a little bit later about the shoulds. And I heard from a few of the individuals that went to the funeral earlier of a lot of shoulds. I am not here to tell them that they should not do that. But I think that should open our eyes to go ahead and identify that we do what we can while we are alive, while we are with one another. That's what we should do, not the should after the fact. So, because that's what they were saying. They should have done this, they should have done that with the departed. And I'm just, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. They want to share or ask.
I just wanted to say that you really should have those should statements before the fact. Because first, you're able to plan. So, first you're able to plan, and then second, you can already kind of think of what the outcome will be.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think we should qualify it of the should of the past we should avoid or minimize. But I guess what we can replace the should with will instead.
willpower.
And that's why we have a willpower. Exactly.
And will is something for the future. Should is for both past and present and not present, but the past and future. Because you can do, I should do this first before I do that, instead of I should have
Yes.
done this. I should have done that first instead of this.
No, I think the element of time is a factor. And I guess if we could replace of the should of the future to a will instead. And yeah, that's why we have willpower. It's not a should power. Right?
Or what about ought? I'm not sure if ought can be used in the past or future, but I'm not sure if that even counts. But
I think, well, because ought is not something that we normally use anymore. And maybe that's the reason why we're figuring out what's the time frame when that word could be used.
yeah.
Because
I find it a lot in my grammar books.
Mm-hmm.
So
you know what, Miko? You ought to learn.
yeah.
You ought to learn that. And share that with me. Huh? Okay? That's what you ought to do.
Okay.
Okay, are we clear with that?
Yeah.
You're fully aware of what you ought to do?
Yes.
Okay. And what you ought to share with me? So I guess you can use it for the future, right? Let's have our ought power.
Oh.
Okay. All right. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I know we've been discussing the importance of journaling, so let's move on to the 25th journal that we have here. So why should we minimize extremes? Because again, just like what I mentioned earlier, that got me teary-eyed with all that laughter.
I know.
So how do we minimize extremes? Because again, if you go ahead and just going back to COVID-19, of identifying that, you go ahead and identify, no, it's a hoax, it's not true, versus, oh, COVID-19 is all around me all the time and I'm sick and I'm going to pass away in the next week here. Well, why would that be the case if you are following all the instructions that you need to do? So,
unless you already have it.
Yeah, so again, just really following these guidelines, just being aware of them, right? And then how do you use self-talk to your advantage? And again, just like what you've identified earlier, okay, if you identify I'm feeling exceptional, that's fine. You're feeling positive about yourself. But what can you do to back those positive feelings back up? So, yeah. There. So again, we have to be careful because we go back to that poem. I think it was Lao Tzu who identified of watch what you think because that's what you say, and watch what you say because that's what you do. Be careful of what you do, because that's what you do over time, over and over, and it's now a habit of yours, it's a character of yours, and that's your future. And then now you come back with, what should I have done?
And possibly teach it to others. And
Yes.
Don't know if it's good or not.
Then you have that cycle. Yes, you're influencing other people. So we have to be careful of that. We have to be careful of our thoughts and get rid of negative things that's not beneficial. Go ahead.
Once you said influence, I immediately thought of school, because influence was one of the words I was learning in my asynchronous work.
Today? Oh, asynchronous work? Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
So did I use the word appropriately?
Well, yes.
Okay, or do I ought to change it?
Do I ought to change it? Do I ought? That just sounds wrong for some reason.
Okay, let's move on to the ought power.
Stop! Stop! This is recording, you know.
So how do you label yourself when you succeed with your willpower challenge? So yeah, go ahead. Well,
am I supposed to answer to this?
I mean, you can share now, or you can just share next week. It's totally up to you.
I'll just share next week.
Okay. For me is okay. Let's go with this one first, and this is where self-talk will go ahead and come in. Because again, if we go back to the shoulds or should have done, again, we have to be careful of that. And then in terms of the self-talk that we have to be careful of, if it's not beneficial for us, let's park it and let's just move on to other things. Just continue to develop yourself. And that's what it is that we have to be careful of. And then when one of the things that we were discussing, I believe, in the Life and Learner Success, wherein we reward ourselves when we accomplish things, when we complete things. We have to be careful of what the reward is. Because if, for example, a common thing that people would do, or the common thing that they would identify is that, okay, my good behavior or my willpower is, let's say, to go ahead and eat healthy food. And then all of a sudden, you're going to reward yourself of super unhealthy food. So if you go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to say no to the donut today. And then all of a sudden you eat really bad food the next day for morning breakfast, for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Then your good behavior of saying no to the donut is rather useless. Go ahead, Miko.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because if you just say no to a donut without S, if it's for breakfast, dinner, breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, whatever, that's more. It's only one donut, and you're probably eating way more donuts for the next day.
Yes.
Let's just say the unhealthy food is donuts.
Yep. So do not reward yourself with something that you just practically avoided. So, and those are other things. Let's say, for example, okay, you're trying to save money, and then all of a sudden you're going to splurge on something that you don't really need. Then it's a useless reward. It's a useless use of willpower. Or let's say, for example, you know, in terms of eating, that's what we discussed. How about, for example, and we know we talked about this, for example, for people drinking liquor. And let's say they say no to drinking liquor today and tomorrow, and then Friday, and then Saturday, they're going to drink a dozen cans of beer and half a bottle of vodka. And okay, then all the good behavior that you did every day is now down the drain because you're rewarding yourself by splurging on liquor. So again, we have to be careful of what our reward is. So let's say for a week you did not eat unhealthy food, and let's say Saturday you ate a donut. I guess that's okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, but you
Because
can't
you're
pay.
probably going to be eating a donut, what, at least twice a week, if you're a donut eater.
I can't say twice a week, once a week, 5 times a week. That's not for me to decide. But you have to look at the trend of what you're doing. So if you ate healthy today, then sure, maybe a donut at the end of the week, just one. Or 2 maximum.
Or 6 million!
So again, I have to be careful of what the reward that we're giving ourselves. Let's move on to the growth mindset here. And that's what it is, unhelpful labels of praise. I don't think you hear me tell you, oh, Miko, you're so good looking. Because good looks is so subjective and it doesn't really do much. But if I praise you with your effort, if I praise you that you get things done, if I praise you for correcting me, then it's a rather tangible thing. Go ahead.
It's not you who says that. It's Mama Lerms, my grandma.
Okay, I'll stay away from that conversation. You know, grandparents pretty much can do whatever they want to do. They're grandparents. But that's why, again, from a growth mindset point of view, we don't say such things. I don't say you're smart. I don't say you're intelligent.
Well, it depends what we're talking about. If it's programming or if it's...
Have I told you you are smart in programming? Have you ever heard me say that?
Not smart, but you did... Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I have never said that. It's even
No,
hard.
I was thinking that you said you praised me for my effort, but I was thinking that it was that I was smart.
Yeah, yeah. Even me just saying that, it sounds foreign to me, like ought, because I don't use ought all the time. I hardly use ought.
Sounds weird though.
Yes, exactly. So me saying, oh, you are so smart in programming, it sounds weird because I don't say such things. It's not even in my thought process. But I will commend you that you're putting in your time and energy. And to the point wherein I go ahead and tell you, well, let's balance things out, because sometimes you're programming, and you fail to do all of the other responsibilities. So take care of the other responsibilities first, then that could be your reward of working on your interests.
Yes, and that's not a bad reward.
Oh yeah, no, not at all, not at all. Of course, yeah, exactly. So no, I don't praise you as such. I don't label you as such things.
A reward that's bad.
Yes. Because going back to, for example, in terms of quote-unquote good looks, what if a person gets into an accident and then now they are deformed or now they lose a limb? And then is that person still pretty or good looking? So again, we have to be careful of something that is not a really growth mindset in terms of point of view or praising point of view. So yeah, you wouldn't hear that from me. From other people, it's okay. I can't control them. But here we are. You are understanding that once you become a parent yourself or what have you, this is something that you can choose. It's up to you at the end of the day. But ideally, it's a more healthy way of praising. Go ahead.
I forgot, but there's this. Remember the P word? The word with the P as the first letter, and then they just say things just to make the kid happy or something.
The P word.
Yes.
The please word. Please. Breathing.
No. Remember we were reading about an article, and then no.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I forgot the word.
I think I know what article that you're referring to, wherein I realized, oh, okay, you understand what they said. Well, you understand what they wrote. And after that article, that's why we really proceeded with this, because you have the mental capability of understanding such things, right?
Yes.
So you see, you saw that, you heard that. I didn't say you are smart. I said you have the mental abilities, because these are things that I discuss in my college courses. The thing that you read, it's somewhat of a college level reading, and you understood it. And so that's why I'm willing to go ahead and share these things with you and to the public, whoever that can benefit from this. It's related to praise, isn't it? The praise? But I know what you're saying. I think it's something else too.
Yeah. I think
oh wait, okay, permissive.
Oh yes.
Permissive versus authoritarian versus authoritarian. There we go.
Yes, that was the word.
You ought to remember that.
You should not say ought anymore. You ought to not say ought anymore.
Okay, what about permissive with what we're discussing right now? Oh, because of just saying, oh, okay, you're good looking and...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right, gotcha. Yes, see, the fact that you remember that article, though it took us time to go ahead and remember what the word is that we're looking for, what the article was about. And yeah, so you're able to relate that to what we're discussing right now. And that's what it is. Because if you're just praising a person, oh, you're good in everything that you do. Well, what do you mean by you're good in everything that you do? It doesn't make sense. But if you go ahead and say, okay, you're good in defense to anticipate what I'm going to do in playing basketball, that's fine. But we can go ahead and improve this, improve that. I told you about boxing out, and I told you, well, it can be done. You can box me out.
I don't remember boxing you out.
But you can. It's all about the angles and leverage.
Yeah, you have so much of a wider leverage. And then you can still kind of jump higher than me, so.
Now, in terms of moving on to negative statements of unhelpful labels, we have to be careful of if you go ahead and start saying, okay, I'm not good in shooting. Okay, then let's go in and improve the mechanics of shooting. Let's go in and improve where we're looking. Let's go in and improve the form. Let's go in and improve how we're doing it. So if something's a failure, and I know we've discussed that. We will fail more than we will succeed. But how do we label ourselves? Do we label ourselves that I am the failure? Oh, okay, so this event is a failure. What can we do to improve it? Let's focus on, okay, how can we get better. Go ahead. Or what?
Or I failed at this event. How can I get better at that specific thing, that specific occurrence?
Yep, that specific situation. So with that growth mindset, that's what we have to be careful of. And again, these are sessions live. And thank you for being with us here. And these are references. Any questions for today's session?
I just wanted to make a statement, actually.
Go ahead.
When you said earlier this would take 40 minutes, about 40 minutes, I just realized it was about an hour.
It's still about an hour. Yeah, well, we have the good discussions, so that's important. Hopefully, was it a senseless discussion for you?
No.
Okay, then hopefully it's meaningful enough.
Yes.
Okay.
And we ought not to say ought and should.
Again, you ought to learn how ought is being used, okay? All right, see you next session.
You ought to stop saying ought. Okay.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video informational and educational. Please share our videos and subscribe to our channel. If not, my dad will not give me dessert.